You're live.
I'd like to call to order the November 9th meeting of the EOTC of the SOTF.
This is the meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Education Outreach and Training Committee, November 9, 2015 meeting. On the call of the roll, Member Wolf. Wolf absent. Member Pilpill.
Present.
Pilpill present. Member Highland.
Present.
Highland present. We have a quorum. There are no agenda changes. May I read the next two items together?
Please.
Item number 2, file number 13035, hearing on the status of the order determination. Complaint filed by James Chafee against the Board of Supervisors Budget and Finance Committee for violating Administrative Code Section 67.15C and California Government Code Section 54954.3B for failing to provide adequate opportunity for public comment prior to taking final actions. Item number 3, file number 14063, hearing on the status of order determination. Complaint filed by Thomas Percolo against my apologies, against Supervisor Farrell, Board of Supervisors, for violating Administrative Code Section 67.15B and California Government Code Section 54954.3A for failure to provide adequate opportunity for public comment on items 5 through 10 on the Budget and Finance Committee, June 16, 2014 meeting.
Member Pilpill.
Thank you. So we've heard these items several times. We've corresponded back and forth with Supervisor Farrell's office. I believe I saw one of the complainants. Did I see Mr. Piccarello out there?
Yes, he's here.
Great. And I believe Mr. Chafee indicated that he was not going to attend further meetings, and we do have Ms. Stephanie here from Supervisor Farrell's office. So in our last communique, which unfortunately was not in the packet, it was a memo dated March 30th, 2015. We now have a response from the Supervisor's office, which gives us some update on what was changed this year. Unfortunately, I think we didn't get the memo to them early enough, so they had already made kind of decisions about public engagement for the 2015 budget hearings. But I would suggest that we hear from Ms. Stephanie, and I have a few questions. We can open it up to public comment and hopefully dispose of the item either one way or the other today.
Okay. Ms. Stephanie.
Good afternoon, Catherine Stephanie, Legislative Aide to Supervisor Mark Farrell. First of all, I want to thank you for the memo of March 30th, 2015. I think it's very comprehensive and provides a lot of suggestions going forward for our next budget season. We have adopted some of the recommendations that were included in that memo, as I pointed out in the memo to you of November 5th, 2015. Just really quickly, looking at the baseline of the complaints in both file numbers 13035 and 14063, it was our understanding that the failure for the Budget and Finance Committee to take action on or take public comment on what is called trailer legislation that supported the mayor's budget, was basically the underlying complaint. And we thought that was very valid and decided this year to make sure that public comment was taken on all supporting legislation when it was scheduled in committee in those last 2 weeks of budget and finance hearings. In addition to taking public comment on those items, which had never been done before. Before it was just all on one Friday. This year, so we had...
Well, if I could just
when we were budget chair.
Right.
When we were budget chair. It's been different before.
It's varied over the years.
I'm just speaking to our tenure as budget chair. So we definitely took public comment on all those items and indicated we would do so both on our budget website and in every agenda, which there's an example of the language that we included on the agenda to let people know that we were doing that. This year, as we did last year, we also provided a way for people to comment on the budget through our through the website. We let people know that as well on our agendas. so that anybody that wasn't able to get out to public comment on any given day could comment through our website, and then those comments were distributed to the Budget and Finance Committee members. I had taken my conversations with the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, Education Outreach, and Training Committee back to the supervisor and members of the mayor's budget staff, and we discussed how to develop a better public process and a better way to really look at the budget and get more engagement. And one of the things that we did differently this year was, instead of just having department heads come up before the mayor's budget was released, as you know, we would have them come up and just talk about basic stats about their budget. We grouped those hearings into things that we thought people cared about based on what we hear all the time and what we get emails about and what generally people tend to care about with regard to the budget. And that was, the state of the city's public safety services, neighborhood livability, the state of our parks and recreation services and services for children and families, and also the homeless, health, and safety net services. So that we pulled those department heads underneath these hearings and gave people more of a chance to really engage in the budget on things that matter to them, and try to make it a little bit more comprehensive. So those are the things that we did after thoughtful discussion about time constraints and everything that we faced going through all of these hearings and everything. Obviously, there are things in the memo that we did not do this year, but that doesn't mean that we can't discuss that going forward and maybe look at doing those next year. But I think I just want to come back to the underlying complaints. It was that when those budget hearings were taking place and the department heads would come up and there were pieces of legislation attached to what they were talking about, especially the fee legislation. I know that Mr. Chafee's comments and complaints really dealt with the fact that we were doing something around library fees and nobody was taking public comment. That we decided, like I said, that it was very valid, and decided that it would be best to do whatever we could do as a committee to take action and public comment, not action, but take public comment on those matters. And then, of course, not take action on any of the matters until all public comment was heard on that Friday. We again held public comment on that Friday, as you know, the first Friday in the first week of budget hearings.
And then action was taken the following week.
Correct.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt, but please conclude.
I think that's it. And of course, any questions, I welcome them.
Okay, thank you very much. Should we hear from Mr. Piccarello since he's here? And then,
Mr. Piccarello, do you want to comment now, or shall I ask him some questions now? Go ahead.
Yes.
all right.
Good afternoon, task force members. Thomas Piccarello. I will say that the budget and finance hearings, pardon me, were a lot less dysfunctional this year. I didn't see the 6 hours of standing in line to give 120 seconds. So I applaud Supervisor Farrell in that regard. However, if you look at the agenda for the Budget and Finance Committee hearings, you will see that public comment is closed a week before discussions of another 20 departments. Public comment, and you can pull it up on your computer. Public comment was shut off on the Friday that we had public comment. The following week, there was a lot of discussions from a lot of departments, and the public was not allowed for public comment. That was the gravamen of my complaint and the order of determination, that Supervisor Farrell, if he's going to have 20 additional departments discussions, then at a minimum, Article 67 mandates public comment on those days. I would have liked to have heard you ask Ms. Stefani why she didn't comply with the memorandum that you said in March. I don't know when Supervisor Farrell got the memorandum. It's dated March. It's unfortunate if the Budget and Finance Committee didn't get the memorandum before this year's Budget and Finance hearings. But again, the gravamen of my complaint, and I believe Mr. Chafee's complaint, was public comment is closed 1 week. The following week, many city departments are presenting for their budget for the fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piccarello. Ms. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you, first of all, for the compliment in the beginning. That was unexpected.
Less dysfunctional. but we're
Yes,
there.
no, but it was good. I'll take it.
double
I'm
negative.
happy. I mean, we want to do better.
Yes.
And with regard to hearing additional departments that second week, what happens is we schedule all departments during the first week, and most of them resolve when they come to an agreement with the Budget and Legislative Analyst Office. And any departments that are scheduled for the next week are just departments that couldn't come to an agreement with the Budget and Legislative Analyst Office. So what happens...
Or that have trailer legislation, because as you indicated, you didn't act on the trailer legislation the first week.
All trailer legislation is scheduled in the first week, because all department heads...
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought that you said that you were taking public comment on the trailer legislation the first week and also hearing the public comment on Friday and not acting until the second week on the trailer legislation. I misunderstood.
Right, no, all the trailer
Okay.
legislation is scheduled in the first week. What happens,
Okay.
we have budget and finance hearings on Monday and Wednesday and Thursday of that first week. All departments are scheduled for the first week.
Okay.
They only came back the following Monday and Wednesday if they had not come to any type of agreement with Harvey Rose. And, so there were no new discussions, nothing new in what they were presenting, their budget. It was just basically them fighting for dollars with Budget and Legislative Analyst
Not
Office.
to interrupt, but, and I'm not too familiar with the process, but it seems to me be more interesting to have public comment on the second week and skip the first week. If the first week is all being resolved with the controller, whatnot, it's the interesting stuff, obviously, that requires further discussion and perhaps merits public comment. So is there any reason going forward next year not to have public comment in the second week? And I understand the balancing act with, with reason and trying to get the job done, but, it seems that some sort of public comment with these more interesting or more complex, if you like, departments, if you like, would be in order.
I can definitely take that back to Chair Farrell, and I can foresee a situation where maybe we would have our departments come back for that second round, maybe that Friday, that first Friday, and then maybe the Monday, and maybe have public comment on Wednesday. That is a possibility, and I could definitely check and see if maybe we can do that. I think it's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and that was one of the items here. I wanted to run through the list.
And this is which list?
This is from the March 30th memo. Ms. Stephanie, do you have a copy of the March 30th?
I do.
Okay. I wanted to run through that in a second. I think one of the suggestions that Chair Hyland just made, and perhaps a color and flavor of it, if the first week of the hearings, if the committee staff, you, the clerk, the mayor's budget office, the budget analyst, whoever can come together and make a list of the outstanding issues. So, for example, DBI, substituting an 1822 for a 23, not fully justified, or some fee issue, or the number of battalion chiefs, or whatever it is in the department, if there's a way to list the outstanding issues that haven't been resolved and make that available, that might be useful for it, regardless of how this happens, for public comment. Because ultimately those, when you get down to it, those are the issues that are really still in discussion for the second week. It's not $8 billion, it's not $1 billion, it's not a whole lot,
right,
quite frankly. And, public comment saying, I actually think if we did use this approach at this department, that would be a better call, because you've really got it down to either or choices. That might be useful to the committee, quite frankly. anyway, just sort of thinking, because there isn't really a document right now that pulls together those outstanding issues. It's kind of just like oral direction given to the budget analyst's office, and they say, yeah, go work it out with the departments. You know what those things are.
Right. I think maybe that can be pulled together. I mean, it's in the BLA report, what they're recommending. But I see
right, but
when
there are
they
things that come up in discussion at the committee, and sometimes the committee in the first week will agree with the budget analyst and put it to bed, or agree with the department and put it to bed, or raise some other issue. I'm really concerned about police staffing in my district because blah, blah, blah. Can you guys go talk about it? Things happen.
I mean, I think that's a possibility.
Okay. Could we just take a moment, and really not long, to go through these 10 items, and we'll share over here? And could you indicate which things sort of happened and which things sort of could happen?
Before we do that, just a quick question, just for clarity and for members of the public, just to make sure I'm clear on this. We had an order determination, and portions of that are clearly being followed by Supervisor Farrell's office. It seems to me that this is a work in progress, not going to be completed over 1 year, perhaps over 2 years. And so I'm just trying to think of where does this go after this session? Do we keep it alive? Do we keep it, to the call of the chair? Just food for thought on that. And then
And Supervisor Farrell may or may not continue to chair the committee, and presumably if he doesn't, there would be some handoff of staff, and this could be one of the documents that's shared and some discussion.
Okay. And these 10 points from the March 30th memo, were those part of the order of determination, or did this
No,
follow subsequent?
these were subsequent to that.
Okay, that's what I just want to make
Yeah.
sure. Okay. Carry on, Papa.
Ms. Stephanie?
So you were going to ask about the 10.
If you could just run
Oh,
through
do you
these.
want me to go through them?
Yeah, could
okay.
we? Or collectively here?
Sure. However you would like. Do you
Just a
want me-
quick scorekeeping. Which ones do you feel you have satisfied, and which ones are still outstanding?
Okay. 1, develop a comprehensive public participation plan for the upcoming budget hearings. I believe that we did that based on what we felt was appropriate at the time. We did not hold a Budget and Finance Committee hearing on the proposed public participation plan.
But certainly that could happen in the future. That's not hard to hold a hearing on something like that.
That's true. And that could be called by anybody.
Right.
That could, I mean.
But presumably the chair.
Right.
Whatever.
Right. Adopt the public participation plan by motion at the Board of Supervisors. I don't think that's necessary.
I don't think so either in retrospect, but I think holding the hearing and having an opportunity for people to comment and say, yeah, that makes sense, or maybe that deadline could be moved a little bit. So there's some understanding, at least at the committee level, what the plan is going forward.
4, include the adopted public participation plan on the Board of Supervisors budget website. We definitely did that. We went over language to make sure it was clear. We worked with the city attorney's office. We worked with the clerk's office. So we really wanted to be comprehensive and thoughtful about how we put that forth, and definitely did that. Allow public comment on each department in the first week of department hearings. That was a little bit vague to me, and we do allow for that.
Right. I think what that should have read is allow public comment when each department presents. So when you hear from DHR, after you've had discussion with the department head or their representative and the budget analyst, you would say, is there any public comment specifically on DHR? How many people? Okay, 2 minutes, right? So that it's not the general public comment Friday that's about anything under the sun, but it's that's specific to that. So if Mr. Chafee or those people that are concerned with the library want to have their 2 minutes on the library, they would have it right then when the department head is there, so it's all on point. That was, to me, that was part of the rubric of the complaint, and I understand their issues with it.
But after this year was kind of experimenting to see how the public comment on the trailer legislation went, and I think it went well. Everybody was so worried that it was going to take too much time, and I think based on the fact that
when it's a good budget year, it's easy. When it's a bad budget year, it's harder.
But I think this is doable. We do, of course, allow public comment when we had the hearings that I described where the department heads were called up. But I see that this is different, and I think it is doable.
Okay.
Was
And
not
again,
done this year, but...
And again, if there's some big concern because the museum wants to lay people off and, 200 people are going to show up on that, then maybe you anticipate that and you call that separately so that you don't gum up the whole works, right? The intention is not to have this turn into a 24-hour marathon. It's so that those people that are specifically concerned about a department can have that opportunity when, and in particular, when the department head is there. Because sometimes the department head will present and then go off. The public really wants an opportunity to be heard not just before the body, but so the department head can hear and the supervisors can say in response, hey, that guy actually had an interesting point. Can you follow up, or what can we do about that?
Right.
If they choose to.
Right. And the time constraint issue is, of course, maybe the library is not going to turn out as many people as maybe DPH or HSA, and then all of a sudden we have, public comment times 2 times, so I mean...
But if there's a big cut at the health department, that'll trigger the Bielenson hearings.
That's
and so
true.
that'll... So there
Would
are other...
Would Bielenson be in lieu of then?
It could, or you may say the opportunity for public comment will be at that time before the full board.
I see your point, and it's a good one, and
it's just to
I hear it.
anticipate.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's
So
number 5.
6.
Number 6?
Allow public comment on outstanding department issues in the second week of hearings. We did not do that.
We talked about
But
that.
we just talked about that.
But we had just discussed that
Right.
that's a possibility.
And of the 50-plus departments, the number that return the second week is like a half or a third, roughly?
Right. It wasn't, we've had a good budget year, so it wasn't that many.
Okay.
Right.
So
I can't remember exactly, but
It's
it was...
often half or a third, sometimes fewer. And the number of outstanding issues is usually...
small as well.
Yeah, it's finite.
So there should be less burden the second week.
Right. And if you're not hearing them again, then I wouldn't take public comment on them again. And when you are taking public comment on the second week, I would say, please limit your comment to the outstanding issues, and you have the memo that's sitting right there. So for the fire department, it's only these 3 issues. We're not talking everything about fire, but, should we increase materials and supplies by 20,000? Should we do something about that? That's it. And if you go off topic, you have tools.
Okay.
Okay.
Good suggestion.
7, allow public comment on each agenda item at each meeting, including trailer legislation. We allowed it on the trailer
Yeah.
legislation. Allow a separate opportunity for public comment on the budget as a whole. That's what we do.
I think that's the Friday
That's
thing,
the first,
yeah.
the Friday.
And by the way, recently it's been on Fridays. Occasionally it's been on Saturdays. So that's a thing for the committee to think about, is what maximizes public comment opportunities.
That's one of the
It's a
reasons why we
trade-off.
did the public comment through the website.
Right. And the committee has also taken it on the road on occasion. There are lots of ways that we've tried public engagement.
Right.
Mr. Pickrell, are you taking off? No, right now. Okay. All right.
He's just...
All right. 9, allow public comment on add backs after the proposed list is available and before any votes. We did not do that.
Would that be part of the second week?
That would be
It
the
would be
second
like the
week.
last night,
Okay.
like 2 a.m. usually.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to really have some thoughtful discussions around that. And
And again, it could be just on the changes or the add backs that were not previously discussed or
Right.
commented on.
Which is usually a page or 2 that's available literally like at midnight or 2 a.m. And for the 5 people who are still here, if they want to comment for 2 minutes and say, thank you very much for the additional 100,000 or the COLA or whatever it is that we got, and really in the next year it would be great if we could do blah, 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 blah. I would just say let them, if they've been hanging out for hours and hours anyway, give them a few minutes. What's the harm? Something to think about.
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Review the effectiveness of this new public engagement process after the adoption of the budget. I mean, I think that's what we're doing here with you,
Yeah.
and we will continue to do so, taking all this back to the supervisor. So we always want to do better, right? We
Okay.
always want to engage more people and make it easy for people to comment, and while at the same time balancing time constraints and things like that. I mean, I think we took a good step this year in taking comment on trailer legislation. I think the fears of the time constraint or the time that it would take up were not realized. So I
That's
think
good.
that was good moving forward so that we can take maybe public comment the second week. I think we learned a lot this year from tipping our toe in the water,
Agreed. And I think that could happen here, that could happen at the committee, that can happen informally, maybe a combination of those things. in some ways, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if you have this hearing in February or March about the process going forward and say, okay, what is it, and then have a follow-up hearing in August, September, October and say, okay, looking back, how did that work? I mean, we could talk here as well, but I think it's useful to have the discussion there so that it's not just the few of us, but it's all of the other players, the mayor's office, department heads if they care, the budget analyst, the city attorney, the clerk. I mean, there are a lot of players that make this work. And I think our intention is to make it useful. I mean, it is, I'm sorry, the reason that we're focusing on this and taking the time is that the city budget is one of the most important policy decisions that we ever make around here, how to allocate resources, what's important. And if we're not having, and I understand realistically how much it actually changes in the budget process. Very little. But in real terms, it's an opportunity for the public to say what is important to them in their government. And if that's not working, and if we're not making that as useful as we can within the time constraints, within everyone's bandwidth, then I think we could be doing better. We could always be doing better, and even if we do all of these things, there may be something else that comes up. Maybe there's some online poll or some other tool that we find in the future. So I don't think this is ever a settled process.
And on that note, I would encourage this committee to think about how to go beyond the current list. Budget and Finance Committee. Those members are going to change up rather than reinventing the wheel 2 years from now. It'd be nice to have something along these 10 suggestions, whatever you want to call it, kind of in place so that the next, freshman year, so to speak, is aware of this and how hard this committee has worked to
you. I mean, you have not just in these meetings, but I know that we've talked, and you've talked to others, and you've engaged on this, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I agree. I think it is one of the most important things that the Board of Supervisors does, and definitely needs comment from the public.
Mr. Clerk, just remind me, do we have rebuttals here, or we're just discussing this point?
This is
just open discussion.
Determine if the order of determination has been complied with.
Okay. Why don't we take some public comment at this juncture?
Can I respond?
Sure. Yeah. If you'd like to respond, and then we'll take public comment.
I concur with both of your comments regarding public comment being more important the last week rather than the first week, and also the public ought to have the ability to comment on each separate department. It is literally ridiculous to expect the public to comment on all the city departments and $9 billion in 120 seconds, right? Secondly, I appreciate Ms. Stefani, saying it's possible and it sounds good. Bottom line is, Supervisor Farrell may not be chair next year. So what she's saying may not be applicable. And so we'll be back here next year with the same discussion. So the task force needs to be more proactive and tell Budget and Finance Committee, whoever they're going to be, what Chapter 67 mandates. So the memorandum should not be a suggestion. It should be a directive to Budget and Finance, what Chapter 67 mandates. So my recommendation is that the task force needs to send a letter to Budget and Finance as to what the minimum requirements for adequate public comment will be for 2016. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piccirillo. Is there any public comment on these two items?
It seems to me that Mr. Stefani has worked really hard to try to change things and comply with this memo, which is pretty detailed and comprehensive. And I know it will take a long time for things to change, but not everybody is embittered and have time on their hands to bring forth sunshine complaints like this. And I think it's very commendable. that the supervisor's office did make a huge effort to comply with this order.
Thank you. Please note no other members of the public in the room. Discussion?
So, a couple of things. We did copy this memo to Supervisor Breed and Angela Calvillo, the clerk of the board. I know there's interest in closing out these files, and I am amenable to that. I think we could find that there's been compliance, or at least substantial compliance with the order. I recognize that, we found a violation. They sort of disagreed as to whether it was or not. We made some recommendations. We sort of got some of those things to happen, but not all. I agree with the comment that this is sort of a work in progress. It's not,
I think we should do exactly that then.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should have a follow-up memo
that takes some of this comment and recast it.
Yeah, it just says that, some of these things were tried implemented successfully.
Right.
Items 2, 5, and 6, we collectively agreed to.
I think it was 2 and 5, not 6.
2 and 5.
Well, or we can
2, 5,
figure out.
6.
We can work with.
I believe it was 2, 5, and 6. 6 being the.
That's what didn't happen, but could.
Right. Exactly. Still to be, implemented, if you like.
Yeah.
And I'd like that to, whether we then, excuse me, close out this item. I'd like this memo to survive to the next, to the 2016 Budget and Finance Committee, whoever that might be.
I'm thinking.
So I'd like to keep this alive in some shape or form. I think a substantial amount of work has been done, thanks to Mr. Stefani, but there are still some things that if we keep the torch alive now, will save us, as Mr. Percola pointed out, from doing this all over again a year or 18 months from now.
Why don't I suggest this? Why don't we find compliance and close these 2 items? Why don't we open a new file on public comment or public engagement at the board's budget committee? Why don't I take a stab at another version of this memo probably to Supervisor Farrell with copies as indicated, reflect that we had this discussion, acknowledge that they made some changes, that there's still some other things that we'd like looked at, that he may or may not be the committee chair. I think maybe if we add as CCs the mayor's budget director, the budget analyst, some others, because there really is a process that's involved there, and to try to have them understand more broadly our interests, so it's not just Catherine sort of carrying that on our behalf. Does that?
I think that sounds great, and I would just make a suggestion to add our city attorney, John Givner.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yes,
I don't know if it's feasible or not, but I'd love to add the
President Breed.
current President Breed, and then whoever might be the
And we'll indicate that we would ask the board to consider this, whoever is and that be carried to the new Budget and Finance Chair if it's not Supervisor Farrell.
Okay.
So
that's reasonable.
I'll take a stab at that, and if we can authorize that letter, can we do that from this committee, not from the full task force?
I think we
so.
authorize it back to
I believe we
recommendation.
can bring it back here. I believe the full task force should approve that letter.
Yeah, but we can get
Okay.
the draft done and then bump it back to the full task force.
So we can create that file. Would you like that at your next meeting? Or would you like to send it straight to the full task force?
Well, I think we can review it there. Why don't we just send it straight to the full task force? Because it sounds like we could use some items like that in January from what I was reading earlier.
Okay, so let me summarize the motion, because it's going to be a little complicated.
Let's try and get it on the docket for January.
Yeah,
Gives you some
so
time.
it's to find compliance and close these 2 files,
And
prepare
continuation letter.
prepare a letter or a memo for the full task force, hopefully for January 2016, as we've outlined.
Yeah.
And do we want to also open a file?
Yes, we should open a file.
And the third thing is to open an EOT file.
It's just a file, because the file will be...
But it'll be here. It's not...
what would that... What would you want to be heard in that file?
If we're going straight to the full task force, it can be a full task force file, could it not?
Right, but I think that we want to keep the issue of public engagement at the Budget Committee here. If we need to elevate it, fine, but I think if we open a file...
The full task force and the committee can hear it.
That's fine.
Okay.
So open a file on the public engagement at the Budget Committee. At BOS budget. So it's those three elements. Does that, Mr. Pecoraro?
Can I comment on the motion?
Sure.
Yeah.
Comment on the motion.
I don't have any problems with the motion with the exception of the compliance. If you make a finding that there's been compliance, you're telling Budget and Finance that what they did was in compliance with Sunshine. So next year, they can do the same thing they did this year and say, well, last year you said we complied. And my argument is they didn't comply. They didn't comply with my complaint. They didn't comply with the order of determination, nor did they comply with your your recommendations of March of this year. So I'm strongly opposed to be any finding that there was compliance by Budget and Finance. If you do that, you're telling them they can do the same thing next year. And we'll be back here next year making the same arguments of closing public comment before there's been a full vetting of all the city departments and agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to answer that, I mean, the order determination referenced adequate public comment, and that's somewhat nebulous, even by our admission. So I think there's been an adequate amount of effort towards that, and in that sense, I would be happy to close it. I think by keeping a new file open, we're going to keep this alive and hopefully, get it polished off. Yeah. Any other comment on the motion?
I think you should state on the public record that the order was adequately complied with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so...
Any other public comments? Okay. All right.
Ms. Stefani, does that all make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, I think we can use the language that was adequately complied with. I mean, the question was whether it was adequate. I think it was, with the changes that they made, it was, from my perspective, adequate. Was it ideal? No. Was it lousy? No.
Actually,
it was adequate.
It was not as it was
better.
It was less dysfunctional. I think that's
It was less dysfunctional.
I think
Yes.
that's the words we should use.
We're going to get a rubber stamp that says less dysfunctional.
Right.
Although a
Okay.
rubber stamp might not work all the time because it'll be, never mind.
It sounds like the Houses of Parliament here. Less dysfunctional, I say.
Is the motion clear enough? Okay. So
Okay.
I'll make it.
Second.
Okay.
Can we take that without objection?
That motion passes without objection, with Member Wolf being absent.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you,
Thank you,
on
Ms.
this.
Stefani.
And Ms. Stefani will be in touch. Great. Thanks.
Item number 4, file number 15020, hearing, policies and procedures guide, how to respond to requests for public records. I believe this was a proposed guide that the task force was considering creating to try to assist departments in creating a standard policy to respond to public records requests.
Correct. And I know we've kind of batted this back and forth, and it's been continued several times. Member Pilpel, perhaps you can bring us up to speed where
I think
you
this
are.
was actually on my to-do list, and I think I have not done this yet. I think what I need here is a little couple minutes of discussion and direction, because I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what I agreed to do, and I'm not quite sure how big we want to make this or how small and
Agreed.
how meaningful. So
Okay.
I need a little help here.
Sure. So, well, what I think this could go several different directions. And just looking at some of the material here in our package, Mr. Young has, I think, gathered some templates, if you like, from different departments. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yes, there are samples of various policies from different departments.
Okay. And
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I think, first and foremost, it'd be nice to distill these different samples. Not that each department can't keep their own sample, because the nature of public records requests vary greatly across our departments. What I'm envisioning is perhaps a one-page, or if you like, a first-page template that goes on top of all these different different departments' versions, if you like. Now, ideally, what I'd like to do, and this is something I talked about when I was up for re-election, is actually an online interactive module where you could go in and look at previous IDRs or requests for information, see how it played out, maybe even put in some SOTF footage so they can see, the public could see, what they're in for as far as how the process works and what areas they need to get up to speed on to get the most out of their public records requests. Having said that, obviously that comes with a budget constraint, and that may never come to fruition, although one day I hope it might. So something that we can put together that is not going to get just lost in the shuffle of papers at a front desk when someone comes up for an IDR, but actually is right there front and center, a very clear, very transparent, very helpful how to fill out an IDR or an information request. At very least, if you can achieve that, and this is not something that departments will be required to keep, but we would strongly encourage that they use it. And as a follow-up to this, I'd like to have some of the custodians of records come in, 6 months, a year from now, and present to us on why the form works and doesn't work, and how it could get better. Because they're the ones on the front lines. They're the ones that see the different nature of the requests and how it works. Whereas we're sitting here in theory, pontificating on how a sample should look. They're the ones that have to deal with it. So that's the overall picture. I think, just looking at the variance and discrepancy in the samples we see here, at very least we can tighten that up and pull that together and come up with a suggested SOTF approved sample or even page on how to fill out a records request.
That's all totally helpful. I have a couple of questions or thoughts. I think there are at least two different versions that I could prepare. One is more direction to departments. That's like a, how-to and step-by-step, and both incorporating things that are required in the ordinance or good practice or things that we recommend about how to respond, acknowledging timeframes, documentation, tracking, all of that.
Like almost like a cliff notes of what's required. I mean, the once-a-year training is great, but how much of that's retained?
That's not even, that training is not the most helpful for this kind of thing. And we've talked, and that's a whole other thing is training. And having more
Gotcha. So we're looking at a
training.
sort of a quick, very short, manual for the departments, and then something for the public also.
Well, and I was getting to that. I don't want to duplicate what's already in the Good Government Guide, whether we agree with it or not. The city attorney has already kind of laid out some steps, and I think most of that stuff sort of makes sense.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Are we talking from the department side here or the public's?
Well, I was first talking from the department side. I don't want to duplicate stuff that's already there for departments. I agree that to the extent that there are things that are common, we should try to identify those. Mm-hmm. But
let me ask you this. How many custodian of records have that Good Government Guide on hand at the records request desk?
Some do. I suspect they don't all.
That's my point. In other words,
this would be something like a one-pager that anybody in the department can, a quick reference guide that anybody in the department can pick up and say, I need to do this.
Yeah. Okay.
Just because the custodian's not always the person responding.
Yeah. How to comply with a public records request. If it's this, if it's an IDR, if it's that.
Okay.
The timetable.
So something less detailed, not for the department record contacts, but sort of for any city employee, how to identify a thing.
Yeah. Let's say someone's covering a custodian record who's on maternity break.
Yes, I get that request all the time. What do I need to do? And I have to walk them through it verbally.
Okay. All right, so something distilled.
I'm suggesting some input from our clerk on this.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Sorry, Victor.
All right, so I'm hearing.
So anyone,
not much for alcohol, but I'm hearing distilled. I'm hearing very distilled.
Yes, very distilled, very succinct.
Okay.
And this is really someone walking past the desk, and there's someone demanding, a records request.
Here's an IDR, pal. Deal with it.
Exactly. How do I? What is my time frame? What should I do? Who should I notify? Things that will, hopefully keep, get the ball.
So in some ways, it's less focused it's not at all really focused on department records people. It's somewhat focused on any city employee, and it's also focused on any member of the public. So it's kind of a blend there of what happens.
I'm trying to get to what really happens on a day-to-day basis. Is the custodian records always there? No.
And maybe in the future, we can develop a more detailed one dealing with specific situations.
Right, and I mean, I already have in my head a sentence or a paragraph on if you're looking for these particular types of records, there may be special procedures, and in that I would put medical, police, employment, things that we've talked about that often become complaints because people are like, oh, I made a records request for that. Well, yeah, but it's not the same thing. Yeah. There are other avenues to go. Okay.
Yeah, like on the public side, it could be, you can request records on this, this, and this. However, this, and this is private and confidential. So
Or is handled in a different process. And
something like that.
Okay, that helps.
Very simple level.
And if we could possibly make sure we quote the sections of the Sunshine Ordinance when we're... so that they can get additional details regarding our advice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, I mean that's always useful, but it kind of reminds me of Rule 3.2 in golf. By the time you read it, you can't understand it. It's so in legalese. So, to the extent
it's a delicate balancing act. That's why.
To the extent that the charter is clear or elucidates on a point, I'm open for that. But I'm trying to get away from pulling the whole.
Well, we don't want to pull the whole thing. I'm just saying give the one sentence advice.
Yeah.
But just stay where we are drawing that advice from.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so refer back to sunshine training, etc.
Yeah. I mean, for me, one of the most important things is for people's requests to be acknowledged. It's not just, I got a thing 2 weeks ago, and finally, here's your stuff. It's, I got your request, here's what I understood you were looking for, I will go get it. If I got this wrong, please let me know immediately.
Yeah.
It's that sort of acknowledgement that's not currently required in the ordinance, but I think is totally helpful to make.
What comes to mind is like a trouble ticket.
Yeah.
Like you go to a help desk and you lodge your complaint and you get a trouble ticket saying, okay, you're in the queue.
Right.
We'll get to this in 72 hours.
We've got our people on it.
And on the other side, let's say the employee just walked past and says, okay, what do I need to do now? Okay, I've got to let the custodian records know. I've got to CC this person and I think this person and show the clock and then give them a timetable as to when this record request needs to be complied by. Like that, think of it, I like the help desk analogy. That may be...
Yeah, no, I like that too.
You can make suggestions on what you would...
And I think people
would be helpful.
And I think... I've observed department people seem more concerned with getting it right, and I have no problem with getting it right. I also think it's important to get it timely. And if they say, they're on it, they're looking for it, here's what we've got so far, we're looking for the rest of it, I think that's better than holding everything till the end and trying to make it perfect. And in a lot of ways, I think it's supporting the main records person in a department who's often trying to pull things from other people in the department who don't quite get the time frames and the importance here. So they're just like, oh yeah, I got the thing, I'll look for it when I feel like it. No, you need to get off your butt and go find the thing and do the search and tell people,
Maybe what would be good is just a very short intro. And I'm thinking more, more help desky, more sort of less officious. For instance, do you know what Sunshine is? Sunshine was something that we put on the charter 20 years ago. We voted for it, us the people.
Well, and
what is it? We're the most progressive. Let me just finish. We're the most progressive Sunshine state or county in the country. That's a great record. So help us with this. Just kind of start on the positive rather than saying, Sunshine's important. Department heads have been fired over this. That's what I'd like to have on the other side of the coin, right? But if we go with something positive to encourage...
I would say that it is fundamental to what we do as a government, and it's a right of every citizen to get information about what their government is doing. And you're part of that, we're all part of it, blah, blah, blah.
And as San Francisco, we're damn good at it. And I think that's a great thing to rally around or to throw out there and get people think, oh, okay, this is a positive, this is a good thing. And they made it so easy for me. Here it is, boom, boom, boom. Yep, let's do it. That's where I want to get to. I mean, will we get there? I don't know. But I think we'll save, if we can get marginal efficiencies in this document, we will save countless hours and future complaints and whatnot. That's the goal here.
Yeah, I
In
mean,
addition, we have all the complaints where departments don't have a policy in place. We have many complaints where we're supposed to follow up on that.
Right.
And this is something that they can base their policies on.
Yeah, we have a lot of, because they're looking for direction from us, and we've never really, we're like, here's a charter, here's sunshine, but we never give them like a, step-by-step manual, if you like.
And in general, my sense is not that city departments are trying to delay or obfuscate, it's that they don't always know. And so if we can just get them
Agreed. Yep.
educated and get them with the program,
Yep.
better things will flow from that.
Sunshine's cool, sunshine's great, here's how you do it.
Right,
And
even in
that's,
the rain.
That's, there you go.
What fuck?
Appropriate today. But anyway, that's
right.
kind of the gist and the flavor and the tone, rather than another tome that's, slapped on the desk that no one really goes
Right,
to.
which is what I didn't want to write. That's why I...
One page for each would be awesome, if we could get it down to that.
Okay.
Are you in agreement, Mr. Clerk, with that? Yeah, because, it's
a quick guide.
Yeah, it's the essence of a phone call that you receive, countless times a day. If we can get that information in a user-friendly format on both sides of the line, then I think we've succeeded.
All right, I will take a stab at this, and we will pick it up again next time.
Okay. Any public comment on this item?
You want to make a guide that would be kind of interactive for the complainant and for the department, that would be user-friendly in simple English that a person could read and understand and file a good complaint. That's what you want to do, and you want to do it in a positive way.
Yes.
Sounds
Well,
good.
Let's be clear. It's not for
Can you turn off
complainants so
the
much
clock?
as for people making requests for documents to begin with. So it's not really a guide to the task force. It's a
Yeah,
guide
I
to
think
public
that's what she
records.
meant. She meant like information requester is I believe what Ms. Trevaux was getting to. Yes, that is a general idea.
Yeah.
And it's. I also want to take a little bit of the intimidation out of it. I mean, you're an experienced information requester now.
No, I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
It was
but
not easy.
It was not easy, and it's a lot of people will get to a desk and turn away because it's just too intimidating, and we want to get past that as well.
Well, initially that's what I wanted, and that's what I was sort of trying to find, and there is nothing like that. It's quite the opposite. Victor is an administrator. He can't give advice. He can direct you to a section of the code, and you can try and write something that fits to that. But it's all the frustration, anger, and time that's spent in this room, because when the other side has no clue about anything, you're just kind of like, it's very frustrating. Not everybody is a lawyer. Not
Exactly.
everybody's has the ability to speak in public.
Or a disbarred lawyer.
I was thinking that.
Sorry.
I behaved really well.
You did.
Thank you so much.
You did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other public comment on this item? Excuse me. I'm still here.
Yeah, this is Ella Johnson, and
Give me one moment. You can stay there, but wait one moment until Mr. Hyde.
Chris, are you hearing us?
We're waiting. We're not doing anything.
Okay, continue.
Carry on, Mr. Chairman.
I was wondering if we could, have some because training from the police department, it would help in, schooling matters. I thought I was talking to a police officer a lot of, vacation time, and he was wanting to go with me because I went on vacation to Bahamas. And he wanted to go with me to the Bahamas with him. And I was wanting to see if I can get some kind of teaching broadcast from the police department and, or in schooling to more capital schooling and on this matter, if that's all right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Seeing no other members of the public comment is closed on this item.
So do we need a motion to continue this to the call of the chair?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Would you like to pass that without objection?
Please.
That motion passes without objection with Member Wolf being absent. Next on the agenda is the adoption of various minutes of the Education Outreach and Training Committee. It's my understanding that Member Pelpel would like to continue these items to the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just didn't have time to do this over the weekend. I will try to do it before the next meeting so that we can have a final version and get these out of the way. These are the last set of minutes, I think, that the task force still has out in advance.
How up to date are we on our minutes?
This is the last set.
This is the last batch
Okay.
for all of the committees and the full task force.
Okay. All right. So definitely by. And when do we meet next, Mr. Young?
January, unless we...
I believe it would be January, unless we change the schedule at our next meeting.
There's no way we can get through this now, just to have it wrapped up at the end of the
I
year.
can schedule it for the full task force, and the task force can...
Why don't we just keep it in committee? I will do this next.
Okay.
One of the other stuff,
No problem.
All right, so I
Okay.
move to continue this to the next meeting.
Second.
Member Pilpa, if you would like to give me a thumb drive, I can give you an electronic version, and
Okay.
you can make your amendments directly to the...
Babu, we will
And then I can just print them out.
sort that out. Yes. Okay.
Great.
We should take public comment.
Public comment on that? Seeing no public comment. Next item is general public comment.
Without objection on the motion?
Without objection, yep.
Okay.
And welcome back.
Hello, my name is Sally Johnson, and I had ideas about new makeup and a new kind of drink, and I also have some ideas about new ways of packing distributors, and I'd like to, review this in Capital School.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Seeing no other members of the public present, public comment is closed.
Next on the agenda is announcements, comments, questions, future agenda items, and pending calendar.
So, Mr. Chair,
Member Pilpel?
so I'd ask Victor to combine this with the pending calendar, and I appreciate that. I think it's good to just have one item with everything. So I'm trying to remember on some of these because I wanted us to be able to...
Maybe I can go through them.
Yeah, that's thank you.
I believe 14047, we're pending policies and procedures. We're waiting for us to come up with a draft before rescheduling that for a hearing.
I'm sorry, was that on the thing that we just talked about, or
Yes.
was this something with the supervisors?
It is not directly related, but I believe it was the understanding that we want to come up with a draft so that we can inform them how we want them to do it in the future.
Okay.
Because I believe they do not have a standard procedure in their office, and we want it to have something that we can give them.
Can we, on that, could we think about having a separate document that maybe I don't get to write on the supervisors? Because it seems to me that we've had a number of complaints against various supervisors, and the general resolution of them was that the supervisors should have a more consistent approach, even though they're all different offices, they all do their own thing, that there are some things in common that we could advise, sort of best practices amongst the 11 offices. Is that something that we could do in connection with this? Am I making any sense?
Is that a good government guide kind of thing, or?
Yeah, but it's more specific to the board, because I think we've learned through hearings that although departments can have thousands of people, the board aides, each office only has the member and the 3 aides, and so to expect them to drop everything and da-da-da-da, really things can be more burdensome. And if we say, the thing with the automatic email, if you've got
I
an
believe
immediate...
this might be a bigger issue because we are going to be discussing rule of reason at our next meeting
I was just going to say
and
this.
so
Yeah.
forth. And maybe when the board gets reassigned new members, we can take up the issue of what is reasonable for the supervisors, along with our discussions of the rule of reason. And
Yeah.
I
it's
guess
a bigger issue.
I guess what I'm looking at is between 14047 and the last one on this list, the 15072, if those were both related to policies and procedures at the board, maybe we could calendar those at the next meeting, have the offices appear, close them out if necessary, and open a new file. on best practices for board members to deal with, because it seems to me that it really is different from public records requests generally. Does that? Can we think about that maybe? Because I just don't want these things.
Maybe we should develop the policy before we bring them in, or bring them in to.
I think we can bring them in and
policy.
Yeah, and have them help. I mean, I think when we turned the Supervisor Breed thing from less of a you did something wrong and more of a how can we fix this going forward, I think we got better engagement on the calendars, on the email, on requests generally.
I can talk to the supervisor's office, and we can create a new hearing file to discuss, what the policy should be for the supervisor's office, and then we can bring them in. And I can advise them that, we're looking more for a discussion on how we can make it easier.
Because
maybe not easier, but standardized.
More consistent. Because aides come and go, and, a new aide getting hired by any supervisor, right, and presumably, there's going to be a changeover in District 3 now. If they haven't dealt with this before, it's like a lot to get whammied with. Mm-hmm. If they had something that they could start with. And I'm sure as the aides have progressed, they've learned things, and they could say, the best way to do this is blah.
Can we not work a rule of reason into our,
we can.
Into our manual on item 4 that we're discussing? I kind of I'm hesitant to even bring that up because the rule of reason is such a large area in and of itself. Maybe a one-line mention of it. Rule of reason is a possible recourse if you're overwhelmed. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
But again, a new incoming clerk to a supervisor, if they had that one-page manual, that'd at least be a start on sunshine for them.
Yeah.
Aside from all the training that they have to do in getting up to speed, that might be a good cliff notes and
Could Victor, on this question, could you maybe outreach to Wilson briefly and maybe more so to Brent and see if we could come up with something that's a suggested approach for each of the 11 offices? I don't know how much bandwidth Brent has, but he's a smart guy, and Wilson might have some thoughts as well, and we could chop it around to the other aides.
I'll create the hearing file, and then we will see what I will investigate and see what I can come up with.
And then maybe if we could schedule these other 2 for the next meeting and dispose of those, that would be
I will speak
best.
with them first.
Okay, all right.
I will speak with them and consult with the chair before scheduling them.
Fair. Excellent. Okay, I'm done with those 2.
May I just go through the list?
Yeah, please.
The next 2, Sean Mooney, 14092. This is an item with the index of record where the city administrator is having technical issues. They have not yet placed it online, and the assessor recorder has asked me to delay the item until they can get the the city administrator to correct their website and get their index online.
But they have completed the index. It's just
Yes.
a question of posting it.
Yes.
Okay.
150, that number is incorrect. That's 15139.
Okay.
You've heard a portion of this before. The complainant withdrew it, but then refiled it under this. Basically, the assessor has a complaint. There's a complaint against the assessor for Form 502s. However, the assessor has stated that form does not exist in their office, and they're trying to provide alternate forms to provide the information. However, the complainant is insisting that he gets the 502s. And
You're working on it.
I am scheduling this before the EOTC as a new complaint, as they heard the previous version of this, and it would be more consistent to have the same committee hear the continuation of it.
Fair enough. On these 2, if the assessor recorder has a new record retention policy, schedule, index, blah, 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 if you could be sure that gets to the complainant, maybe that would help resolve it. So when we do hear the item, he can say, okay, I got it.
I will do what I can.
Okay. You've been in contact
I
with
can
Mr.
try.
You've been in contact with Mr. McCaffrey?
Yes, I have.
Okay, cool.
I contact him about once a month to find out what's going on.
Excellent.
The next 2 are general hearings that the committee asked for. about policies and procedures for 2 departments. I believe once we create our
Yeah, that's
one-page
related to the
shortcut,
larger thing. Okay, I got it.
there's next one's a hearing file concerning specific times for hearing items. That will be scheduled at your discretion.
That was the BARF discussion? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That we are.
15044. This is the item where the public library does not allow the public to use their audiovisual equipment.
Yep.
You asked that I create a hearing file for future discussion.
Do you want to take ownership of that one? I'm kind of not so much with that.
The next one is by Member Wolf.
One second. Member Highland?
Why are we taking ownership of it?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't so keen on the Library Commission thing.
And
Do you want to have that hearing? I mean, if we schedule it, fine. I'm not sure that I'm going to expend a lot of energy on that one.
yeah, I mean, that one is not high on my list either.
Okay.
Would you like to make a motion to table that matter?
Well,
We've essentially heard that matter.
We've heard it under a complaint file.
Yeah.
However, there was a request to open a separate file for possible future discussion on it.
I mean, maybe what we do is flip it around and put that one sort of on the public. Schedule it for the next meeting, invite members of the public, and if they have suggestions, take them, and if we decide to move on them, fine, and if not, that's the end of it. I mean, if someone has a great idea, I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, again, I mean, we've heard a lot of detail
Right.
on this. They've had the engineer, they've had the IT guy wheeled out in front of us, and charts and diagrams. I remember all this.
Yeah.
It was. How do we rule on this? I think
It's
we
a
rule-
hearing, so it's for
On
discussion
the complaint,
purposes
we found
only.
the task force found a violation. I didn't join, but the task force did that.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is, I guess, is my pushback that we spend gobs of time on the library, and
Yeah. Although now is a good time to keep pressure on the library after the last fiasco.
So I guess my sense is let's calendar it next time and deal with it one way or the other.
The chair can let me know when
No
they make their
comment.
decision.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then the last one
next
was number
item
one.
is a potential hearing on Yammer and other social media. That's at the request of Member Wolf. And the last one is policies and
We talked
procedures
about
from
that.
Supervisor Marr's office.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to take any public comment on that item?
Yes.
Is there any public comment on item number 7?
And this is specific to future agenda items.
Yes, I have the papers that I filled out, more, for the task force and police department to inform them a little more about, what we can do to make sure that these people don't get shot and killed. And which I did last time, and it went perfect with the police department.
Thank you.
There's no other members of the public in the room at this time.
One other thing that occurred to me, and I don't know that it's for a new file in the committee, we mentioned briefly Wednesday night that Prop E had failed passage. That's still true today. But I believe that there have been some discussions about what happens in lieu of Prop E. Are there some elements that might come back? I recall the basic things were about time certain agenda items, translation, and video testimony, and live streaming of meetings. So I guess I'm just alerting you that I wouldn't be surprised if some of those things come back in one form or another. Could be sooner, it could be later. And I recall that Chair Washburn indicated that the League of Women Voters was going to be taking a larger look at the ordinance So there may be some efforts around all of those things that come to bear. And I suspect that that'll be more with the full task force, but some of it might get subbed down to this committee level. We'll just see how it plays out, but I just wanted that to be on your radar screen.
Very good. Okay.
That completes the agenda for today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.